let's think about how those four different political parties could work together, right? And to go back to the previous slide, I really view these four groups as the four political parties that equal a proper data democracy inside a business, right? So, in Canada, we've got, you know, three legitimate political parties, in my opinion, but five or six on the ballot. Each of them have similar goals in terms of a Canada that is, effective and well run. They all have very, very different philosophies on how to get there. They all have to sit in the House of Commons together. This is something similar about your business, right? How do these four parties with four different philosophies but one ultimate shared vision come together to help people win with data, right? And it equals representative democracy or representative data democracy. And that's the ultimate root cause here, right? So for a data-driven initiative to really be successful, all four of those political parties have to work together in concert with that common goal at a macro level. The business must win, but with a specific goal for the data initiative and a clear owner, which again would be representative data democracy. And that's ultimately the solution here. It's not go buy this software. It's not hire Napkin, although I strongly encourage it to. We're very smart. It's not create a title that doesn't exist. It's about, if you accept this framework and realize that everyone in the business can work together, then you should really start working together now, right? So step one of this solution, you got to go around the org. You have to get people to acknowledge and buy into this concept of a four-party system. If the executive team goes, yes, that's awesome, but IT doesn't, it's not going to work, because IT has to do a tremendous amount of the heavy lifting on major data initiatives. Data must be created. All four of these groups need to at least buy into this concept once, right? Find a data initiative. What I've started to flesh out for you today in terms of planning for a cookieless world is a great example. There's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in businesses right now. Maybe that's the first thing you try, but everybody has to agree to play together once. When they do, I always do it on a per data initiative basis, but assuming it's this planning for the cookieless world, each one of those four groups, IT, data, business users, and the executive team, have to ideally have one person from their org who will be point on the initiative, and everyone has to agree that one department will be the elected representative in charge of the initiative. So again, going back to one of my first few slides, a cookieless world initiative should be owned by the C-suite. A member of the C-suite should ultimately be the executive sponsor of this program, but there should be a direct downline into the other three groups with one person who's in charge of the contribution of that group. So all four parties have someone elected. Ultimately, someone's in charge of the committee, and then they work together because they have to, right? So if the IT department doesn't sign into a cookieless world initiative, you're not going to end up with a good data layer. You're not going to have good data engineering or infrastructure or governance or availability or documentation or any of those important things, right? So if IT is going to participate in this four-party approach to planning for the cookieless world, they get to be a source of requirements. It can't just be the C-suite going, business transformation, and I read a Gartner report, and we want to be able to do these things in 3 years. IT needs to be able to go, while I agree with that, we can't consider it successful unless it's been documented, QA'd, it is governable, whatever requirements they have to play kind of risk management and maximum uptime for the business. Same thing for the data team, right? If they have to contribute time and effort and be a part of this initiative, even though the executive team owns it, the data organization should be in a position where they go, cool, we can help. However, it needs to follow this schema that we use for other things. The data must be able to be made available to, AWS in the following ways, so we can hook it into these other things. Like, that is winning for us. When projects are managed like this sometimes, and everyone gets to have an opinion on what finished looks like, I understand that scope creep and complexity can be a real easy way to kill an initiative, right? I'm not saying that 100% of everyone's requirements make the finished specification for that first piece of work. But everyone's requirements have to be equally weighted and considered to bound what a good kind of version 1 initiative will be, or else it's not going to work. And I'll tell you right now, any department whose requirements are not considered is going to be less excited to push a bunch of capacity and budget and people at developing a piece of work. So initial solution, all 4 parties need to play, or else it's not going to work, right? 4 platforms from 4 parties equals, well, 1 aligned plan. It should be 4-4-1. My typo, right? The executive team needs to treat this cookieless world as a major opportunity. It's priority corporate executive. They will proactively endorse and support this initiative. They won't just go, that's a good idea, and then take off to the next thing. This will be actively owned. They will ideally have a project manager to bring the whole initiative together, reporting directly into the executive team. And they will also be, a source of real executable requirements for kind of version 1 of this cookieless world program. The business users are also going to step up by doing a full review of all the tools they have in the ecosystem of AdTech and MarTech that require cookie data to work. Maybe they cross out a bunch of things that won't work anymore moving forward. Maybe they make a large list of, forgetting tools for a second, here are the business cases we would like to accomplish. We want to be able to target display advertising to specific groups of people. Maybe we can't retarget individuals, but we want to be able to retarget audiences. Maybe we want to be able to continue to personalize email, call center scripts, direct mail moving forward based on the data we bring together. And also thinking about the impact of data in terms of reporting and democratization, right? So we've looked at the tools, but we've also looked at the users of the tools. And we would like everyone to have a common level of training in terms of this type of reporting. We would like everyone in the organization to be able to contribute to planning by understanding data strategy this far, right? So how do we kind of up version all of the users and our infrastructure as part of this initiative? And that's where a lot of their requirements are going to come from. The BI and data team is going to review all of the owned data in the business. They're going to think about digital data as an important piece of that pie moving forward. And they're going to make a list of requirements on how digital data should be captured, named, structured, made available, and integrated internally with the other data that exists. The IT organization is going to review the current state of infrastructure. Do we have a data layer? How are things deployed? How much kind of, as mentioned earlier, kind of hot fix level spaghetti JavaScript is in our tag manager? How do we move ourselves as an organization into a place where all of that cruft is gone? And we've got some rigor, some QA, and some documentation around data creation, data availability, and data governance, right? I just said the same initiative in 4 completely different ways. Those are 4 different sets of requirements, but when you mash up the defensive requirements with the offense requirements, you end up with something that's really quite exciting, right? And it will be much easier to execute than to have one team try and bullet through. And again, if you're on this call and you work in data, I would guess that most of the initiatives that you're involved in right now have one part of the organization sponsoring it, everybody else kind of either unaware or fighting against it. That's where we get that 1 in 5 from, right? So if you buy into, for starters, I guess this kind of approach to preparing for the cookieless world, but also the applicability of the 4Cs framework in terms of actioning data projects, then here's some next steps, here's some takeaways. So regardless of someone's role in the business, if they actually like being employed there, they all have the same goal ultimately, and that's to move the business forward. Different groups of people in the business, normally based on role, have very different philosophies. By the way, the easiest way to figure out what a group's philosophies are is to figure out how they get their bonuses. For example, IT bonuses are often tied to uptime and quality of service. Executive bonuses are normally tied to growth of the business, growth of gross margin, things like that. and different groups have different philosophies, and ultimately democracy trumps anarchy. I don't want to turn this into a full poli-sci debate here, but I think we can agree that people working together in a business is going to do better than people working against each other, right? From those takeaways, here's some things to think about. An initiative that uses data is a data project. Whether you're buying a new email tool, whether you're planning for the cookieless world, whether you're redeploying Salesforce, an initiative that uses data is a data project, and this 4Cs framework is applicable to that, right? Other parts of the organization, especially other parts of your organization that will have to contribute to a project, therefore should be sources of requirements and not just capacity. That's really important. A, it makes the work better. B, it will ensure a higher take rate in terms of buy-in and support across the org. And when you talk to people, you're more likely to have them listen. You're more likely to have them contribute, right? Active communication across the org on data projects, it makes them go faster. It makes it easier to retrospect on them when you're finished, and it makes future projects much quicker, much more effective.